I'm 26 years old, and I used to work part-time at Walmart a few years ago, ages 17 to 21. For some background, I'm a little girl, and this Walmart is in the middle of nowhere, only 10 minutes from my house. But the store is right off the highway, and there are no other nearby stores for probably half miles. It's not the middle of nowhere, but it's definitely scary. Especially at night, if you walk outside the shop, you won't be able to see anything other than the parking lot on the highway. But at night there is an eeriness in the air, especially every night when I have to walk to the car after my shift is over. I work from 3 p.m. to 10 a.m. most nights, so it's obviously dark when I go out. It's usually very quiet at this time. But I've been in some very strange situations, and I've met some strange people. But this woman takes the cake by far. I don't remember the exact time, but it was near the end of my shift. Probably around 8:30 if I had to guess. Had to go to the bathroom, so I walked to the back of the store and I went in and did my thing. No need to talk about it too much. I had just finished eating in the booth when I heard someone walking in the bathroom. I really didn't think about anything until I realized that the woman in the bathroom with me was crazy. Her footsteps got closer and closer until finally she was standing right in front of my bedroom door. My bedroom door was the only one that was closed, so she must have known that it was occupied. Plus, the other doors were wide open, so I don't know what he was trying to do. All I could hear was his breathing in front of me. I started to feel a little strange, so I told him, "Hey, there's still someone here," even though he didn't say anything. A few seconds later, he came into the stall right next to me and started making this. Very strange voices, almost demonic. I don't know how to explain it, but it was very uncomfortable. I was honestly too nervous to even get up and leave the stall right then and there because I was worried about what was in front of me. I really wish I would be bloated get out of the stall though. Like really, because maybe I shouldn't have to go through what I went through. Just want to warn you now that some of what you're about to hear is so graphic and downright disturbing that you may... I'm not saying you haven't been warned. I see towards his feet in the booth, and I saw that they were pointing at me, which means he must have been looking at me for whatever reason. I didn't know he suddenly got up on his knees and looked down the booth directly at me. He had a cold, broken expression on his face. Then he smiled at me. He had big yellow teeth, and some of them were even missing. I immediately screamed, and I told him to get out immediately. No joke, that's when he pulled it out. Some pepper spray and tried to spray me with it. Luckily, he missed my eyes, but some also hit me in the face. I then started kicking him in the head, and I ran as hard as I could out of there. Isn't there actually something wrong with people? I think I was so scared that I didn't even bother to tell an employee, and I just ran to my car. I also didn't call the police because I thought he was probably gone by now, and plus I thought me kicking him was punishment enough. To be honest, I was afraid I would get in trouble for kicking him too, even though I just wanted to defend myself. I'm just worried the police won't see him like that considering he's quite old anyway. After that, I've had some weird nightmares about him over the years where I was in the same stall, and if almost any scenario happens, it seems like in one of my dreams he attacked me physically and somehow managed to sexually abuse me. I don't want to discuss this part too much because I have a lot to talk about, but even now, every now and then I still get reminders of it all in dreams, or should I say, nightmares. That was just a regular workday for me when I worked at my local Walmart, and it was definitely not the best day. Luckily, I have some good friends from school who work there with me, so time would pass by faster with them there, so at least I had that to look forward to. Almost every day on a night shift, there was an old man I kept seeing. He had been in the store for about an hour, and he didn't bring a cart, and also didn't carry anything in his hands. It was kind of unusual, but I couldn't do anything because technically he wasn't doing anything wrong or illegal. Plus, this happened when Walmart was open 24/7 before COVID. I actually didn't mind working late nights. I'm a night owl, and it's very easy working late nights. All I really had to do was make sure everything was cleaned up, some stocking, and that's it. Aside from some other small tasks I had from time to time, working, it's very easy to come back to the man just talking a second ago. I had seen him at least 5 times within an hour, and he seemed to just wander around the store aimlessly. The next time I saw him, I decided to stop him and ask if he needed help finding something. And I noticed he had been here for a while. He just stood there and stared at me like a weirdo, and he didn't say anything. Suddenly he ran off in another direction while glancing back at me here and there, as if he was paranoid about something, music serious. One of the weirdest things that ever happened to me in my life, my whole life. I couldn't understand what was really going on. Plus, I didn't meet him for another hour. And at one point I thought he left the store. But buddy, I was wrong. Because further, when I saw him, there was red substance all over his clothes that looked like blood. My mind clearly concluded that something was wrong. But at the same time, something inside me thought it was some kind of nonsensical joke. It felt like that, by the way. Early morning, and there were only 2 other workers in the entire store with me. And I hadn't seen any other customers for over 30 minutes. It was very isolated, and the fear I felt was immense, and at that moment, it was very intense. Like I could just run, but there was something inside of me that was so uncomfortable that I stood there frozen in fear. Now he just stood there silently and made sharp eye contact with me. I finally snapped out of it and started backing away, and after a few seconds I turned around to try and get help. Honestly, I thought he would chase me, but when I turned around he was gone. I found one of my coworkers and we called the police. It took about 20 minutes for them to show up, of course, and the worst part was, the man was still in our store. We ran to the back and locked ourselves in one of our manager's offices, and we stared at the security camera. He was just walking alone and maybe looking for me or scaring other people. Eventually the police caught him, and what they found was truly astonishing. All the blood on his body wasn't someone else's. It turns out he didn't hurt anyone else besides himself. Apparently he had been stabbing himself multiple times with a small pocket knife in the Walmart bathroom. There was blood everywhere, and he dragged his trail throughout the store. And he made me so nervous that my boss told me to go home early. I'm sure the man was sent to a mental institution for evaluation after the hospital and hopefully prison if needed. Can you imagine if I had made him upset or something? He might have tried to attack me. I'm sure the only reason he did it was because I was so patient with him. People like that are very unpredictable. I'm glad I can still tell the story. I worked with an old guy named Jim at Walmart a few years ago. I really hated working there, but it was my first job. The job wasn't necessarily the worst. It was mostly some of my coworkers who made being there suck really bad. To give you a better idea of Jim, he's like a 6'3" anorexic. His head was half bald and he was a former drug addict. He was in his mid-40s, but he looked almost 60 years old. Almost everyone dislikes him at work, because he always throws tantrums and acts like a crazy person. His vibe was always off to me from day one. But despite that, I was always nice to him, but I would keep it short when he talked to me. Never seemed to get a hint that I wasn't interested in the slightest before I stopped. There were rumors circulating that he was a pedophile. I was only 17, so of course that pushed me further away from him that last night. I worked there before I quit around 9:30 p.m., but I'm not allowed to leave until 10, so I have to find a way to stay busy. My dream was there too that night, and he was acting a bit unusual, even more unusual than usual. I don't know much about it. Aside from what I told you, all I know is he gives me the creeps. I don't know why he always acts so angry, but it seems like everything will overwhelm him, and he will throw tantrums where he will have a temper tantrum. This anger happened almost every night I worked with him, which fortunately isn't very often because he usually works nights, and since I'm at school, I'm usually on the morning shift. I'll look after chess for some of my coworkers, though when they need it sometimes. So that's why I work late at night. I'm sweeping up from behind, and when that's James coming up to me from behind, and he grabbed my arm, bro. What I said when I turned around, it surprised me because I had headphones on, and I wasn't expecting someone to do that. Hold my arm like that randomly before I could even say anything else. He laughed and apologized. He took a stick out of his pocket, and yeah, if I wanted to smoke with him, I told him to leave, and I wasn't interested. He kept trying, but finally I raised mine. Made a little noise and I told him I don't smoke weed. And I'm underage, and if he doesn't leave me alone, I'm going to tell the manager. When I told him I was underage, he gave me this very scary thing, smiling almost like he was aroused by her or something, and that made me sick. Thank goodness he finally backed off and he left. I finished my work, then I headed outside because my dad was my ride, and he was already out there waiting for me in the parking lot. Of course, Jim was standing out there in front just smoking weed. He was literally smoking out in the open, like no one cared, though. Honestly, I don't even care. I'm just annoyed because I don't want to see him. I walk past him, and after that I take a few steps forward towards my father. Hey honey, are you sure you don't want to do this before you leave? The offer was still on the table. Luckily, I didn't even have to do anything because my dad was there, and he witnessed everything my dad got out of his car, and he told him to back off, and he asked what the problem was. Jim was a bit fussy with my dad, but you could tell he didn't want any trouble with him. He couldn't pick on someone his size. I couldn't help but wonder why he wanted me to smoke so bad. I felt like he was trying to smoke profit from me or something, but I don't know. I really don't know what to do with it all. But you can't deny how creepy he is, and the fact that he won't leave me alone is just plain and strange. Maybe it wouldn't have been so bad if I hadn't been 17 at the time and he wasn't so scary. Anyway, I completely stopped working there and I didn't show up for my next shift in the morning. Told my boss what happened and he didn't blame me. I think Jim might be fired. I could probably continue working there, but I don't feel comfortable with that after what happened, and besides, I don't think my dad would let me. He's very protective of me.